Right,
negotiation. Getting a feel for, yes, negotiation.
Basically, negotiation is what do I like, what do you like, what do we like, and how are we going to do it? It involves nailing down things like hard limits, stuff that you're just not going to do no matter how much somebody wants you to do it. Stuff that you really want to do and are hoping this person will do with you. And then there's stuff that's in the middle that could be fun, haven't tried it, sounds interesting, maybe I'm kind of lukewarm about that. You talk about all this stuff, and it's not, I mean, back in the day, and I guess to some extent still, they have these online checklists that you can go down and just mark off bunching dozen different things, and those checklists are actually kind of handy, if only because they provide a basis for questions. Somebody will say, what the heck is this? I've never even heard of this. And then you can talk about it. You can look it up online if you have to. But it provides an avenue for conversation and for opening up dialogue. If neither partner is very experienced, then I think those checklists are a good idea.
Yeah, they're great.
If I know that my partner is inexperienced, very often I'll ask them to fill out one of those because, to be quite honest, it saves me the trouble of going over all the possible options with them.
Yes.
Because there are so many options.
Yes, we have an extensive, we have a link on our site. We have extensive link. So, that I'll tell everybody about later. But yes, those are wonderful. I want to just I have a personal question. Interject. Now, two things, just to clear the air here. Interrogation scenes, do those lead to sex?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. And you've already said you and your wife both play with other people, polyamorous. You're polyamorous, and that is another recording for another time. But I just wanted to get that out there, that some of these do not result in sex. Can you tell me a percentage of scenes that end sexually?
Oh boy.
Or is that not?
No, I can't. The reason I can't is there are several reasons why I can't. Number one, I don't count.
Okay.
But number two, it depends on when you say the scene ends. I mean, I've been involved in interrogation play that has involved an orgasm for the bottom, but not for me.
Okay.
And then at some point after the bottom is tied up and we're cuddling, all of a sudden then sex happens.
Okay.
So at that point you're saying, okay, did the scene involve sex? Well, not until after the whistle blew.
I get it. I got
it. But, sex did happen. And then I've had other scenes where I never took my pants off. Mm-hmm. The whole thing, top to bottom, start to finish, until I sent the bottom home. She was naked, I was not.
Okay.
I mean, it varies. This is something that does need to be negotiated in advance. If you're going to have sex with somebody, you don't surprise them with it. And I should add one other note about negotiation. For me personally, and for most competent players that I know, you do not renegotiate a scene upwards once it starts.
Okay, good. Once it started, what you got's what you got.
Well, no. I said you don't negotiate it upwards.
All right.
It is entirely possible for someone to say during a scene, I don't want this to lead to sex, even though it was negotiated that it would before it started.
Hence, the bottoms having more.
The top can say the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But on the other hand, once the scene starts, you do not say, I want to get sexual with this, when you have previously negotiated that you would not.
Okay.
You can go down, but you don't go up. The reason being that once things get started, hormones start going, people's endorphins start running, their brains don't work the same way anymore. And you could make a decision that you'll regret either way, but I'd rather regret not doing something that I can do later than regret having done something that I can't undo.
Redmagus, this is such good information for our listeners, and I really appreciate it. Tell us about can you describe your favorite scene? Think now's a good time to go into that?
Yeah. I mentioned before we started recording that there are a lot of interrogation players out there who feel that interrogation scenes have to be these really heavy-duty, gung-ho, I'm wearing camouflage and combat boots, and I'm just going to wring information out of you any way I can. And that's a legitimate way to do it. I don't want to say it isn't, but it's not the only way to do it. Probably my favorite interrogation scene was one that kind of developed spontaneously. It wasn't negotiated. That is, everything we were doing was stuff that we had negotiated doing beforehand. It just came together in an interrogation scene. And the scene actually started out as a tickling scene.
Oh, wow.
The bottom was, she was a lady who she loved being tickled. But, she would not tell me where her most ticklish spot was.
Oh, I can hear the excitement in your voice.
And what I ended up doing was orgasm play.
Okay.
I kept making her come until she told me where she was ticklish.
Well, that'll work.
Eventually she just decided that she could not take another orgasm, and she told me where to tickle her.
Wow.
And that's probably my favorite interrogation scene.
Now, how long, I have to know, how long did that last?
The orgasm play was about 20 minutes.
Okay, wow. Okay. You're either really good at your craft.
It's one great advantage of playing with women. I could not have done that with a man.
Well, we'll have to have a podcast at some point where you you explain to men how to give women orgasms like this. I'm sure they want to know.
Okay.
So many over 20 minutes. I'm partially kidding, but I think it would be good to know. Okay, let's continue.
So, yeah, that was because she did not want to tell me where she was most ticklish for obvious reasons. But it was kind of a love-hate thing. Eventually she did, and she was glad she did.
Now, what are some of the other things you've done interrogation scenes for and over?
Oh, geez.
And have you done any with men?
I have helped in a scene with a man. I've not been the primary top in a scene with men.
Oh, interrogation with more than one person. That's a whole nother thing. That's great.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm sorry. What other things have you done for interrogation? Like what types of information?
You mean types of play or types of information?
Types of information you're trying to get out, because we're not all that creative here.
Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily anything very creative. It can be anything from the bottom's mother's first name to where she hid your keys.
Oh.
The information can be the suit of a card that she drew out of a deck. It can be all kinds of things.
Oh, keep going. I mean, that's good.
It can be anything trivial or important. It can be, what's your favorite food, or what have you always wanted to do and never done with somebody else. Mm-hmm. It can be, what was your greatest secret as a child? It can be, what time did you get to work this morning? It can be anything between those extremes. Mm-hmm. And there are scenes in which the specified information isn't necessarily known to the bottom, or that is to say they know the information, but they don't necessarily know what they're going to be asked for. Those scenes tend to be harder to do. They're harder to pull off successfully because those are more like, for want of a better word, real interrogations, where the subject doesn't necessarily know what information the interrogator's trying to get.
Okay.
But those I was about to say, those are difficult, and I don't recommend them for people who are just getting started, because you have to really be able to read and understand your bottom in that situation. You have to be able to get a feel for them that's more art than science, and it's not something that I would want a new person to really go for.
Okay, that's good. And I'm hearing things that I've never done interrogation play, but as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, bratty little bottoms, stealing the keys and running away and hiding them, or, hiding them somewhere.
One way to do it.
Is that,
yes.
do you usually find scenes kind of start that way? How do you actually start?
I wouldn't say usually. They can.
Mm-hmm.
That would certainly be one way for a bottom to indicate that she wanted a scene like that. It isn't something that I'd recommend that they just do impromptu off the top of their heads, just never having done that sort of thing before, because that's kind of opening a can of worms. And see how to put this. If you're doing a scene like that, you hide your dom's keys and don't want to tell him where they are. If he doesn't even know that you're looking for an interrogation scene or that that's the kind of play you like, he might just get mad at you.
Right, okay.
You kind of have to be both on the same page before that kind of thing will work. Mm-hmm. So in an established relationship where this kind of behavior isn't out of the ordinary, then that can work just great. Mm-hmm. The top is likely to pick up on the cues in that case and understand what you want. And either he'll say, I'm sorry, I'm too tired for this tonight, or he'll jump in and go for it. But it's not something that you just want to do first time out of the gate.
Okay, good.
But, yeah, it can start that way. I've also seen them start as abduction scenes, where the bottom is just kind of grabbed out of nowhere. And that's a subject for a whole different podcast.
Right.
So... it can be anything from that to the bratty bottom that you mentioned, and anything in between. Most of the time, I would say these scenes don't usually start until after the bottom's restrained. Generally speaking, that's when the action kind of gets underway, but it can be done more spontaneously at either end, for either the top's end or the bottom's end.
Okay, so you would say that most of, or a large amount of your scenes probably start off with you restraining the bottom somehow.
Yes.
Okay.
And generally that's going to be a cooperative venture. Like I said, if it's more of an abduction force play scene where I'm, kind of grabbing the bottom out of the blue and tying her up with duct tape, then she's not necessarily going to be cooperating with that. But most of the time, most of the scenes that I've done, the lack of cooperation hasn't started until after the bondage is on.
Okay. Now, what, this is like, it's like how adult grown-ups play together, which is how I always like to describe different forms of BDSM. Is what we do as grown-ups. We play, right? In a grown-up way. How would you suggest, and I'm just going to throw this out there, kind of maybe jumping ahead, a husband and wife or a couple would start, negotiating, talking, how might this look, or I don't know if you could describe a scene that you've had, or seen new people take part in. Yeah, I know it's a tough one.
Well, let's see. Are you asking how would somebody who has never done this kind of thing before negotiate it, or are you asking what does an interrogation scene look like? Because those are two different things.
Well, I do think it's two parts, and I think we've already kind of talked about the negotiation, the checklist, and kind of talking about what you both like, and then how would you lead into a scene and then do it, or can you describe something you've done to give people ideas that might want to try this? So I guess I am asking both, but the latter half of your question probably.
Well, most of the time, and this I guess is one of the differences between a scripted role play and the interrogation scenes that I've usually done. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, it's understood between me and my partner that she has some piece of information that I want and she does not want to give to me.
Okay, yeah.
That's understood going in. That's understood when I restrain her. At that point,